Good. So 7 o'clock, Monday night at the Buddhist Center. So I'm Subhadramati, and very, very, very warm welcome to you. So yes, I'm sitting here at the Buddhist Center where I actually live. I'm lucky enough to live here at the Buddhist Center in one of our communities. We've got 3 communities here, and I live in one. And I'm here with some other members of my community, and I'm going to just invite them all to come and stick their heads on the camera and say hello. So we've got Kusla, Sarah, and Polly, and Alex, and we're all our crew tonight. There they all are. That's nice. Good. Thank you. Lovely crew. So yeah, so we all live together in one of our Buddhist communities here at the Buddhist Center. So that is very handy because it's one of the conditions that's meant we've been able to keep the center open all through this lockdown time and just keep trying to extend the Buddha Dharma to as many people as we can. So yeah, so here we are. And I don't know how many of us are here now. How many of us are here together? Okay, so it's about 40 of us. That's lovely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the format of the class, and then we're going to start with a little mini meditation just to settle. And then I'm going to talk for a bit, and then there'll be a chance to ask questions, and then we'll end with the transference of merits, a very short Buddhist ritual. So yes, I've said it now, haven't I? That's a format of the class. So let's begin by a little meditation. I want us to do a loving kindness meditation. People know that as the Metta Bhavana. So what we're going to do is settle down here. We're going to dim the lights here as usual. So see if possible, sit upright to meditate. That's really good, including the team. Really, really good. What we're trying to cultivate in meditation is a state of alertness. That's a very, very important aspect of meditation. Good. So energized calm is what we're trying to cultivate. We'll be meditating here with you. So just take a moment to get yourself settled. That's what we're doing here. Just closing your eyes now. And more people might join us, so I'll just be welcoming them in. Good. So just making sure you're comfortable. Really feeling the whole base of your posture. Settling on the ground. Just really tuning into all the points where your body's meeting the ground. Seeing if you can get a sense of your weight dropping down. A little bit harder work to get that sense if you're on a chair at home, but you can just keep bringing your attention down. So your weight's going down. The rest of your torso rising up. Your spine rising up in its own natural curves. Perhaps you can think of a young tree or a young plant growing towards the light. strong yet flexible. Head just poised. Softening your face. Softening your hands. Your belly. Tuning into your heart center. If you're just joining us, we're just doing a little mini meditation now to start the class. So just join in with that. And now just bringing to mind something that you feel grateful for. And just dwell with that for a few moments. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. Maybe even it's something you usually take for granted. Your mind goes away, just coming back to the thing or the person you feel grateful for. Allowing yourself to be affected. Now bring to mind a good friend. Connect with a sense of them or an image of them. And see if you can connect with the fact that they want to be fulfilled in their life. They want their lives to flourish. And all you have to do is just align yourself with that wish, that natural wish in them. And then imagining all beings and realizing that the same is true for all beings. All beings want their lives to flourish. They want to be fulfilled. We can just align ourselves with that impulse for growth. And if you've just joined us, you can just join in with this little meditation. Extending our solidarity to all life. And now, when you're ready, in your own time, just opening your eyes and bringing the meditation to a close. Okay, good. So very nice to meditate with everyone. Good. So do sit at ease now. So I'm going to talk for a little bit now, and then there'll be a chance for some questions. And then we'll finish probably with another very, very short meditation. Good. So I don't know how many people are with us now. Oh, 83. So it's doubled since I last asked. So some of you might have joined us through the meditation. So I hope you were able to join in with that. So very, very warm welcome to everyone from wherever you are, and especially a warm welcome if it's your first time to the London Buddhist Centre online. So I'm Subhadramati, and I'm going to be leading the class tonight. And this week, all the classes have got the same format. So this week, each evening, a different order member, a different member of the Triratna Buddhist order is going to talk about becoming a Buddhist from their own perspective. So I'm not talking the abstract, but I want to tell you how I became a Buddhist, and tomorrow night someone else will, and each night, Monday to Friday. So it's like a little mini series. So really, really encourage you to come to that, to come every night if you can. And if you can't come every night, you can watch them on catch up. And I think, we're doing this, the same format every night, but at least a couple of reasons, actually. I think, you might have the question, well, what does it mean to be a Buddhist? And in a sense, there's no such thing as a Buddhist. There's just actual people who are Buddhists. It doesn't exist in the abstract, is what I mean. It's Buddhism is something that's practiced, that's lived through people. So I know those people are very different. So even this week, you're going to hear from 5 very, very different people. So who've all become Buddhists, who didn't sort of start off Buddhists, as it were, but all have become Buddhists. So, you've got me, for example, mid-50s, working class Scottish woman. Tonight, tomorrow night, there'll be somebody else, and so on. And yeah, we've all become Buddhists. Even one of the evenings, we're going to hear from Dana Utah, who's Malaysian, and she was born into a traditional Buddhist family, but actually even she became a Buddhist, if you see what I mean. And that is because to become a Buddhist is something you have to choose. It's an active thing. And again, that's the reason why we want to share with you. Some of us want to share with you our journeys of how come we've activated that, how come we've chosen that. It isn't something, it can't really be something that happens in a passive way. For me, this contrasts with my earlier life, where I was born into a Catholic family, and as a tiny baby, probably just a few weeks old, I was baptized a Catholic. So obviously I wasn't choosing that. I was a very, very, very tiny, crying, presumably baby at the time, having some cold water poured on my head, but I was baptized as a Catholic. So there isn't the equivalent of that in Buddhism. Buddha is something that we choose. So I'm simply going to tell you my own journey, and it might stimulate some reflections in you, even some questions. So yeah, as I'm talking, if you do have any questions, you can even ask personal questions if you want to. I'll be very happy to respond. So I'm going to tell you my own journey. And more and more, when I've been thinking about my own journey to becoming a Buddhist, it's like there's 2 versions of it, or 2, I don't know, versions is the right word, like 2 levels of it. So there's the literal history. So I could sort of, and I will be saying some of the literal history, it was a young woman in London, blah, blah, came along, like rang the bell of the Buddhist Center, came in, got taught meditation and so on. So there's the literal step-by-step how that happened. But more and more, and maybe this happens as you get older, it's almost like you realize there's a deeper current, there's something deeper than the literal that's sort of playing out. There's some sort of pattern that's playing out, and you can start to see that. One way that I've particularly been able to start to see that is by the practice of telling my life story to friends, maybe a little bit like I'm doing here with you now, but in a more intimate setting. It's something we very often do in Buddhist communities, for example, or on longer retreats. Earlier on, for those of you that were here right at the beginning, I introduced you to 3 other people from my community, and there's 6 of us all together, and we're quite a new community. We started last December, and one of the very first things we did was we told our life stories to each other. And it was just very, very illuminating hearing about different people's lives. And again, you can see there's these 2 levels. There's the sort of what happens in the historical story, but you can start to see the deeper current, the deeper drives in people, the deeper qualities in people. And I've told my life story many times now, and have been able to, with the help of friends, start to get a sense of, oh yeah, there's something deeper, almost unraveling quite isn't the right word, sort of raveling, traveling and raveling through. So yes, I started to think, when I was thinking of talking to you tonight, of turning points in my life that led to me becoming a Buddhist, or were part of my becoming a Buddhist. So the first turning point happened when I was 11 years old. So up until that point, I had been a Catholic. As I said, I was baptized a Catholic, not knowing anything about that experience of being baptized. At the same time, I really, really embraced the religious life. I embraced the Catholic religious life, kind of with a vengeance, really. I was a very, very good little girl. I was thinking there's a short story by Saki about a little girl called, what's her name? Bertha. Anyway, Bertha was described as horribly good. Anyway, I was horribly good as a little girl. I didn't do hardly anything naughty. I never talked when the teacher went out of the class. And I prayed a lot. I went to chapel, as we called it, every single morning, and prayed. And I prayed through playtime sometimes as well. And I went to confession every single week. And as well as going to services at chapel, like Mass and so on, I often used to go alone and I guess kind of meditate. And nobody had ever taught me to meditate, at least contemplate. And I used to try and imagine heaven. That was one of the things I used to try and do. I used to try and imagine what heaven could be. Anyway, when I was 11, I can remember exactly where I was sitting in the chapel, praying, not really praying, but contemplating, meditating. I realized I didn't believe in God. And I remember this, it was like something encroaching on me that I tried to push it away. I didn't want to not believe in God because my whole first 11 years of my life had been based around this belief. But I could feel just the thought coming, it's not true. It's not true. And I remember how my 11-year-old mind thought about it. I thought, oh my goodness, like God is just something invented by those grown-up people to explain things that we don't yet understand. And as I've said, I tried to push that thought away as hard as I could, but I couldn't push it away. Well, that was it. I don't believe in God. I couldn't make myself believe anymore. You can't. It's interesting with that kind of belief. You can't enforce it. You can't, even to yourself. So that was a turning point. And very interesting that was where my mind went, that God was used to explain what we didn't yet understand. And I, even when I was 11, I thought, I'm going to learn as much as I can about science. That was what I thought would explain everything to me. And in fact, I did go on to study science. But anyway, it didn't explain anything. But that was what I did go on to do in that endeavor. But anyway, that was the first turning point. The next turning point was when I was 17. And that was something that happened in my family. I always kind of semi-hesitate to tell this story because I don't, in some ways, a bit difficult talking about my family. And I in a sense, I don't want to say anything sort of bad about them, I guess. But this was quite a difficult occasion. When I was 17, and well, yeah, becoming an adult, had my first boyfriend. And anyway, there came a climax where my dad, sort of held me to account and said I had to choose the boyfriend or the family. And I was standing on the front doorstep with this choice to make. And I chose to go. Yeah, I chose to leave my family. And that was very painful. And a very big rift for a long time, but I'm glad to say it was healed in the end. But many years later, but that was what happened when I was 17. I was given that choice, very stark. That was how it was presented: choose or choose, and I went, and I left. And then the next turning point, in a way, quite similar actually, when I was 21 or 22, I was now living with a said boyfriend who was a very lovely boyfriend, and I was living with him and the rest of his band. He was a drummer in a band, and I really, really loved that lifestyle. And it was, I found it exciting, even a little bit glamorous, and interesting, and felt like I met a lot of interesting people. And anyway, one day I was offered a job in London and found myself, I don't even know how this happened, but found myself, again, I can remember exactly the occasion. I remember my boyfriend was still asleep, and I went and woke him up and I said, I've been offered a job in London, I'm leaving. I couldn't even believe I was saying it myself. And I left it all, and I went to London. And when I was thinking about these 3 turning points, I thought that each time they were about freedom. So I think the one when I was a child in chapel, it was like being freed from, I don't know, a sort of belief system that was stopping me grow. When I chose to leave my family, and yes, I do hasten to add, I did go back eventually and was warmly accepted back. In a way, it wasn't really that I was choosing the boyfriend over my family, lovely as he was, the boyfriend, but I was choosing freedom. I couldn't live like that. I couldn't live under that condition. So I had to go. And then when I left, then the boyfriend and the band and everything, that was, again, something in me knew I had to live my own life. Something in me knew that I was living my life through these other people. And I had to go. None of these were conscious choices. It was more, in a way, even to say they were choices doesn't seem quite right. It was like something in me chose. And I remember years later reading a poem by Ted Hughes, the English poet, who wrote, you may have heard of that collection called Birthday Letters, about Sylvia Plath. They'd been married. and she died tragically. Anyway, he wrote about a time when she was riding along on her horse, and the horse, I don't know, started to gallop, did something, got out, the horse lost control. And it sounded like she was swung right round to the other side of the horse. So she was holding on to the underneath of the horse for life. And Ted Hughes in the poem says something like, that was impossible. You know, it was impossible that she survived that, but she did survive that. And he said, and this is the line I remember, he said, perhaps your poems saved themselves. He said, something in you that wasn't you saved you. Perhaps your poems saved themselves. Very, very emotional just saying that. And I felt like, oh yeah, that's what it felt a bit like, making these choices of freedom, that something in me saved me, that somehow wasn't me, sort of was me, but wasn't. So all those three turning points were well before I was a Buddhist, well before I even knew anything about Buddhism, but they're absolutely part of me becoming a Buddhist. I'm absolutely sure of that. And what they meant was that at the age of 21 or 22, something like that, I found myself in London alone, an atheist. And yeah, it was the very first time on my own. I remember it was the very first time I ever had a room on my own in my whole life, a little, you know, just room in a shared house, but I never had a bedroom on my own. In my large family, we always shared with the other, you know, there were 7 children in a council house, so we shared the bedroom. And then, yeah, I'd lived with my boyfriend. So it was the first time to have, literally my first time even to have a room on my own. It was a mixture, you know, it was sort of, I found that freeing. I also was lonely. I was sort of, I don't know about bored. I sort of was bored. I didn't know what to do with myself. Seems strange to me now when I wish I had more time. And I set about looking for things to occupy myself with. I had a job and tried a bit of this, a bit of that, like you do. And eventually stumbled along to a meditation course run by the London Buddhist Centre, not here at the centre, but a sort of outreach in central London. And went along to that course, very, very taken by the people leading the course, very, very taken by the teacher, Dhammarathi, who, you know, very, very warm, intelligent welcome from him. Can't actually remember much about the meditation, but yeah, I was first struck by the people. But what I remember was on the 3rd week of the course, my journey home, I got off the bus and then I just started to run. And I was running with joy and exhilaration. And I was running because I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I had found something that I could completely give myself to. And I realized that's what I'd always wanted. I'd wanted something I could completely give myself to. And now when I look back, I wouldn't have had the words for this at the time. It was just an intuition at the time. But it was a correct intuition, because what the Dharma offers is an unlimited ideal. And I think that is the only thing that you can completely give yourself to. I think you can only completely give yourself to something that's unlimited. If it's got a ceiling on it, you can't completely give yourself to it, because we haven't got a ceiling on ourselves, I suppose. We are beings who are capable of unlimited growth. That's what the message of the Buddha is. That's what this Buddha figure behind me represents, the potential for unlimited growth of a human being. And I really, without knowing it, I had come across something that offered unlimited growth, so I could give myself to it completely. And I somehow realized that was all I ever wanted, and that was with it. But I hadn't consciously known that's what I wanted. But anyway, that was why I was running with joy. And when I got back to my another shared flat by this time, there was an orange there in the fruit bowl or wherever, I don't know. Anyway, I cut open this orange, and this happens now and then. The seeds of the orange had already started to sprout. So inside this orange, there was seeds that already had quite strong green shoots in them. And to me, somehow, this was all of a piece, the running home, the realizing that I had this unlimited ideal I could wholly give myself to in this orange with these that had already started to grow. So I took them out and I planted them, and actually they grew for a long time. They didn't last forever, but they all grew into three. I had 3 orange trees. So this was another turning point. And the last 2 turning points that I want to say, and then I better stop or there'll be no time for questions. I started to come along to the Buddhist Center. We had a cafe and I started to work there on a Saturday, volunteer there on a Saturday. I still had my other job in the Royal Society of London, which is a quite prestigious science organisation that somehow I'd managed to get a job there. I don't even know how I managed that, but anyway, I did. And I remember working in this Buddhist team in this restaurant on a Saturday, you know, sweeping the floor and washing the dishes and stuff. And I was a bit bemused by this team. They weren't at all what I thought Buddhists were going to be like. But anyway, that's another story. But I remember leaving my shift one day to go home. And the thought in my mind was, these people believe in me more than I believe in myself. And that was another turning point to realize, I guess that was me realizing what Sangha was, what spiritual community was to be with people who believe in you more than you believe in yourself. And at that point, I changed my lifestyle. Ever since then, I've worked in teams of Buddhists and lived in Buddhist communities. And then the last turning point I'm going to mention was just the discovery of this figure, which I'm going to hold up. Is that on view in the camera? Can you see this? Okay, so this figure is an archetypal Buddha figure. And the figure is called Ratnasambhava, which means the jewel-born Buddha. It's an archetypal aspect of the enlightened mind. So I discovered this figure on one of my first retreats. And I was absolutely captivated and delighted to discover that there was a Buddha of beauty, which is what Ratnasambhava is, a Buddha of beauty. And the opening yourself to more and more beauty was a completely sort of valid and bona fide way to live a spiritual life. So that, in a way, why that was so important to me goes right back to my early religious life, which was as a Catholic. And, you know, I wanted to be a saint and a martyr, and I wanted to suffer as much as possible. I probably was a bit of a sort of caricature of a Catholic when I was a little girl, but this represented the complete opposite. And the path of beauty, the path of becoming too big to be useful. And what that figure, who I meditate on every single day, means to me is that becoming a Buddhist isn't a once and for all thing. It's something that I keep, hopefully, becoming more and more every day. So the journey of becoming a Buddhist isn't by any means, it's by absolutely no means finished. It feels like it's just beginning for me. So there is one person's story of becoming a Buddhist. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to now pause and see if you've got any questions to ask me. And it is your chance to ask me any personal questions if you want to. And I'll try at my best and respond to them. But I really, really would welcome any questions from you, and because Sarah will let me know if there's any. You might need a minute or two to think about them.
I've got one question.
Yeah.
How would you define yourself today?
How would I define myself today?
Well, there's another question that might help as well.
Yeah.
So what does your name mean?
What does my name mean? Okay. So my name, Subhadramati, means very beautiful devotion or very auspicious intelligence. But really what my name means is that I'm a Buddhist, actually. That's really what my name means. My name sort of symbolizes spiritual rebirth. When we're ordained, one way of thinking about it is we're initiated into a new life. And that initiation is marked by being given a name, quite a thing to be given a name. Someone else chooses it. And my preceptor, Anjali, who has sadly died now, chose me that name, and with that meaning. But really, the real meaning for me, apart from its actual meaning, is that I'm trying to live out this spiritual rebirth as a Buddhist. So I guess that's how I see myself today, is trying to live up to having a Buddhist name, this particular Buddhist name, but trying to live up to being reborn into the family of the Buddha, which doesn't mean that I'm not part of my family of origin, as it were. Some of them might even be watching. I hope they are. It means that I feel even more connected to the biological family that I was born into. It's connected me even more with my actual family. It's connected me even more in love to them. But that's what my Buddhist name means to me.
So a couple of questions that maybe also tie together. So was there a point of commitment prior to being ordained, and what did that involve in a gradual process? And then, so that's from James, and Jill says, when and why did you choose to be ordained?
Okay, so there's two questions about ordination and how did I choose? When did I decide to be ordained? So there's a sort of double answer to that. So one bit of the answer is I think I always knew, I think at least from my first retreat, I always knew that I would join the order, that there was nothing else to do than sort of throw my lot in fully. And ordination, that's what ordination represented to me. But even though I knew from early on, it took me ages to ask. In some ways, I don't know why. Probably all those silly things like not sure if I was good enough. I don't know. I don't know. Why did it take me so long to even ask? But it did take me quite a long time to ask, maybe 3 years or something after that first encounter. And I remember the specific incident that just tipped me over the edge. It was in the shrine room actually here. And I was sitting just about over there. And it was Christmas. It was the Christmas period. And there was a day retreat here. And it was a puja, which is a Buddhist ritual. And it was being led by a particular order member. And during the puja, someone became quite disruptive and stood up and started, I don't know, walking about and talking loudly and being just sort of a bit disruptive. And I remember feeling about, oh my goodness, what's going to happen now, And that leader just completely held his ground. He may have slightly raised his voice, not raised it, I don't mean raised it as in shouting, but just slightly raised the tone, just about that much, a notch, But he just carried on with those verses, carried on. And the person just pacified and settled down and sat throughout the ritual. And I just thought, okay, why are you hesitating, Subhadramati? Somehow, I don't know, it's funny, isn't it? One moment can just, but I thought, yes, this is, I want to be part of this order. That really sort of struck me that moment. But it wasn't that in itself decided me. I sort of already knew, but it was the final grain of sand, on the scale. And then once you ask for ordination, there's quite a long period of training. You have to really prepare yourself in order to make a sort of solemn vow. And a vow is a very, very serious matter in life. So you have to know yourself well enough, deeply enough on your conscious and unconscious levels to know that you will be able to be witnessed in making a vow, that you're integrated enough, that you're positive enough, that you're ready for spiritual death and spiritual rebirth. So there's a good few years of training. So it probably took me about, not very good with dates, but maybe about another 4 years after that to then actually become ordained. I was ordained in 1995 when I was about 32. Yeah, so hopefully, thanks for the question.
Yeah, a couple of questions around whether you had any doubts, and specifically whether there was a conflict or things that are hard to get to grips with around your scientific training or atheism.
Okay, so was there any doubt, and was there conflict around my scientific training or atheism? Yes, to all of them. So which one shall I answer first? Okay, so first of all, the atheism. That was a big thing to get over, because I learned to meditate. My first encounter with Buddhism, as I was saying, wasn't in this shrine room. It was in a little hard hall, and there was no Buddha figure, and there was nothing really religious at all, apart from, I remember there was a single flower in an empty Perrier bottle, and there was one stick of incense, but I didn't even think the incense was religious. I thought it was to hide the smell of people's feet, because everybody had their shoes off in the room. And so that was my first 6 weeks. So then when I came along to the center and saw these huge Buddha figures, I was horrified. And when I realized there was such a thing as Buddhist ritual, that took me quite a long time. Well, I don't know how long. It felt like a long time, but when you're only 21, even a few months feels like ages. Probably it took me a few months to understand the ritual aspects, that the Buddha figures were representing something quite different than the God that I didn't believe in anymore. So then the scientific training, that was interesting as well. I had already become, I don't know about disillusioned with my scientific training. Well, what I can say is this. I wasn't very good at science. That was the first thing. And I wasn't very good at it. It's really hard. Any of you who've ever done like a physics degree or a maths degree, it's really, really hard. So I was rubbish at it. Also, I smoked a lot of dope when I was studying, so I wasn't very good at it. But then one of my very first Buddhist classes, I realized that actually I'd been asking the wrong question. So I've been trying to ask something like a sort of why question, like why does the universe exist? All these things that, back when I was 11, I thought that God was meant to explain. And actually my whole question changed into something much more like, how do I live my life? So actually, it actually resolved the whole scientific thing. And actually now I'm quite interested in science again, although I'm still not very good at it. But I'm kind of more deeply interested in it. In a way, I'm more interested in the mystery of it. So that is, okay, so that's true. Then the other question was there any doubt? So I've been quite fortunate in that I have not been afflicted by doubt very much. I've been afflicted by plenty of other things. People usually have like greed, hatred, or doubt, really. And I think I've been much more of the hatred type. That's been much more of my working ground, irritation, hot-tempered, irritability. So I haven't had much doubt apart from just before I got ordained. So I had already been invited to be ordained, and I was, a few months before, and in the whole lead up to being ordained, I had the most dreadful self-doubt visited me. Doesn't often come. It's come once or twice since. It usually comes when I'm taking a very big spiritual step forward. And it lasted right up to the night before my ordination. And I remember I was absolutely convinced. I was on retreat by this time, on the ordination retreat, a month-long retreat it was. And I was absolutely convinced that I was going to be discovered as a fraud and sent home. So yeah, it was very, very strong. And that was right up. And I was going to be, it was my time to be ordained the very next day. And I was still like completely afflicted by this, sort of paralyzed by it. And then that night I had the most beautiful dream. And in the dream, I dreamt of a field of roses, beautiful roses. And I was just overcome by the beauty. And then I noticed that one of the roses was all brown and horrible and bad. And I immediately thought, oh no, it's all ruined. It's not, look at that. Like, it's all horrible now because I'd seen this horrible rose. And then there was just the presence of a female figure behind me. And this figure, as it were, spoke to me and said, look, it's not all ruined. It's just out of this whole field, there's just this one tiny flawed rose. And the whole thing isn't ruined. That's all. There's just this one little flaw. And that resolved the doubt and the dream. And then I woke up and I was ordained. It was all fine. I wasn't sent home. So yeah, it was, which also goes to show that you can, the Dharma can appear to you in a dream, which it certainly did in that case for me. So yeah, it's lovely to be reminded of that, actually. Yeah. I think maybe, still time for another question or so.
Yeah, Luke's asking, what did you mean by too big to be useful?
What did I mean by too big to be useful? I hardly know myself. I hardly know myself, but I think, yes, I found myself just saying that when I was thinking about Ratnasambhava. I meant something like going beyond a utilitarian approach to life. I think our life is sort of bounded by sort of utilitarian values, even our Dharma life, even our spiritual life. You can end up thinking, reducing it to a matter of being, I don't know, like a good person, doing good in the world, which in one sense is better than being a bad person doing bad in the world. But to me, it seems very, very reductive. A Buddha wouldn't think about doing good. An enlightened being wouldn't think about being compassionate, being generous, being kind. We would experience it as compassion, generosity, kindness, wisdom. But for a Buddha, it would just be the natural mode of being. They wouldn't be trying to do good. A Buddha would be simply responding. If there was someone suffering, they would respond appropriately. If there was someone joyful, they'd respond appropriately. If there was no one there at all, they wouldn't. They would just happily not respond because there'd be nobody to respond to. So they wouldn't be sort of do-gooding. I think I've kind of maybe got a bit of a personal horror of my spiritual life, my Dharma life being reduced to a matter of do-gooding. As I say, it's not that then that you should make it do-badding, but but you want something much, much bigger than that, that's gone beyond that distinction, really. I hope that helps. It's a bit of a poetic phrase, too big to be useful, but yeah, it's essentially an aesthetic approach to life. It's kind of, it's beauty, it's the approach of beauty. Maybe another way of thinking of it is rather than thinking of being a good person, think of being a beautiful person or a big person. And that's what this figure Ratnasambhava speaks to me of, sort of bigness and beauty. Okay, so I think I'm probably nearly run out of time now. So sorry if I didn't get to all the questions. Thank you very much, everyone who asked. It's very, very nice to be asked these kind of questions. It's a bit of a treat for me to be able to talk about things so deeply. So thank you for all of you who asked those questions. So in a moment, we're going to finish by a very, very simple ritual of the transference of merit and self-surrender. Just before that, I want to do a little donor appeal, really, and I'm going to appeal to your generosity to really ask you to contribute to what we're trying to do here at the Buddhist Center. So ever since we've had the Buddhist Center, but particularly ever since lockdown and we've turned into this online center, I've been really, really moved by the lives we've affected. We've had so much appreciation written to us, and emails, and even actual cards. And somebody today even offered us a virtual bunch of flowers. They held, Shobit from India held us a bunch of flowers to the screen. I don't know if Shobit's here tonight. Yes, how beautiful. That was such a lovely, so been so moved by the real lives that we've been able to affect. People telling us that, being able to join in with these classes was the first thing that gave them hope. People telling us that by being able to join in, their lives have been moved from being black and white into color. People really, really, really very deeply affected by the fact we've been able to run these classes. And of course, we want to keep doing this. We want to keep doing it, well, not just for the period of the lockdown, but also beyond. But of course, we've majorly lost our income. We're not able to hold the Dharma bowl. We're not able to run retreats and courses and so on. So I'd like to invite you to give to this Dharma. I was going to say project, but it's actually much more than a project. It's a vision. I'd really like you to invite you, if you wanted to contribute to that. There's no question of having to pay for this class or any of our classes. It's not that at all. That's offered freely. It's much more, it's an invitation to help us to keep reaching out. So if you would like to do that, the link's below, and we'll post it in the chat box as well. So please do give to this Dharma vision, help us to keep reaching out. And then I just want to tell you about next week as well. We've got a special course on, and we'll put the link to that in the box as well. And that one, the course next week, the week after next is one that's, again, it's free, but you have to book for it. And that's so that we can send you emails and invite you to Zoom meetings and give you lots of support to be on the course. So do book on that as well. Good. So with that, we'll end by transferring our merit, which actually is very fitting, and was always a fitting end to any Dharma occasion, but particularly in talking about becoming a Buddhist, because this is really what becoming a Buddhist is for the benefit of all beings. That's the deepest meaning of becoming a Buddhist. So let's recite and call and response the transference of merit, and really, really invite you to join in. I know you can feel a bit more self-conscious doing it at home. At the same time, it can be more meaningful, especially if you're on your own, to transfer your merits and self-surrender. So let's just sit for a moment. And then we'll end just by blowing the candles out here in a ritual way, and that'll be the end of the class. Transference of merit and self-surrender. May the merit gained in my acting thus Go to the alleviation of the suffering of all beings. My personality throughout my existences. My possessions. And my merit in all three ways. I give up without regard to myself. For the benefit of all beings. Just as the earth and other elements are serviceable in many ways to the infinite number of beings inhabiting limitless space. So may I become that which maintains all beings, situated throughout space, so long as all have not attained to peace.